Japan Year 20XX. At the T University, Professor Kanji Yakutani is busy doing his work when Matsumoto calls out to him to inform him about the arrival of a pharmaceutical company representative to discuss about the joint research. Kanji asks Matsumoto to escort the representative to the meeting area. Later, while Kanji is busy working, he is notified that he had been working for long hours. While trying to get up, he feels faint and dizzy, so he quickly grabs some Calorie Mate and energy jelly and eats them. While doing that, he sees the photo on his desk and remember how his younger sister Chiyu, who died of brain tumor, nothing could be done to save her, and even her parents and relatives gave up on her. This broke Kanji, as he blamed the fact that there should have been effective medicine to save her. This eventually leads focused on to find more effective medicine for the disease. He continues working throughout the night and decides to take a 45-minute nap while the compounds process. He falls asleep while hoping to run a town pharmacy someday. Matsumoto comes in the next morning to find Yakutani's dead body. Yakutani awakens in an unfamiliar room with a maid looking over him. She's happy that he's finally woken up. Yakutani is dazed, and the maid tells him not to strain too hard because he was struck by lightning and hadn't recovered. When Yakutani answers, he finds himself stunned by his voice and new body. He quickly stumbles to the window to find himself in a city that looked like it stepped out of a painting. He questions the maids and learns that he's now Pharma de Medicis, the youngest son of the de Medicis family. Yakutani realizes he died in the office after working himself to death. She makes preparations to help Pharma remove his bandages, as he discovers the last thing he wrote down on his arm and rubs it away. As the bandages are removed, Charlotte notices the Panactheo's holy arm on Pharma's arms. Pharma mistakes it for a Lichtenberg figure and accidentally calls the medicine god the god of fear and chaos for a moment. As Charlotte gives a tour of the manor, she talks about Pharma's family. Charlotte mentions that they're nobles because of the divine arts they use. Both Pharma and Charlotte panic when Pharma doesn't remember how to use divine arts. Charlotte warns Pharma that he has to learn soon, or, in the worst case, he could be driven from his estate in shame. Pharma goes back to his room and thinks about the divine arts. He pictures the form of water and the marks on his arms glow. He then produces a ton of water, so he goes to the window to expel it. After stopping it, he spotted Charlotte in the garden, who's delighted that Pharma remembered how to use the divine arts. Pharma finds he can create element and compounds while also erasing them as long as he knows their chemical compounds. He erases what he created when Charlotte arrives. She then asks about Pharma's medical knowledge, as Bruno liked to question him over the dinner table. Pharma is taken to the study where he can read all the books, likely due to Pharma's memories. He also finds that the medical knowledge of the world is stuck in the medieval age. Pharma heads to the dinner table where Blanche, Beatrice and Bruno are relieved that Pharma's okay. Pharma lets his family know that everything is okay while having to realize he needs to live this boy's life. After being tested by his father on how to make the salve used for his arms, he's allowed to go back to his studies with Eleanor Bonnefoy. Eleanor is suspicious of Pharma's placid personality, timidity and lack of charm. Pharma mentions how he was struck by lightning, and it gets him off the hook. Because of Pharma's lack of knowledge regarding the divine arts, so Eleanor decides to teach them instead of medical knowledge for that day. She mentions how nobles have various gods that they pray to, with the de Medicis family worshipping the Panactheos and the Bonnefoy family worshipping the Hydrotheus. Pharma has questions about the null attribute and what divine art can create or eliminate items. Eleanor says that not much is known about the null attribute and that only a god or monster could create or eliminate things. They head to the riverbank where Eleanor notices that Pharma forgot to bring his divine wand. Pharma mentioned that it was on the shelf at home, so Eleanor offers to let Pharma borrow hers. Eleanor shows off a spear of water and asks for Pharma to do the same. Pharma does so only for the spear of water to be massive in size and blow Eleanor back. She asked how Pharma could do such a massive attack while not doing an incantation. She decides to check out Pharma's mana by using a divinometer. Pharma holds it and it overloads. Eleanor is startled and asks how it should be possible. She sees the Panactheo's holy mark, and while Pharma tries to call it a Lichtenberg figure, he's proven wrong when she mentions marks don't glow. She also mentions that Pharma should keep this a secret. As they head back to the estate, Pharma helps escort Eleanor because she lost her glasses. He tries to help her see better by using finger holes. Pharma then accidentally activates his divine eye to see Eleanor's sprained finger. Eleanor is shocked again and scared when it's revealed that Pharma has no shadow. She begs for mercy and falls over. Pharma de Medicis hears from his father, Bruno de Medicis, that Eleanor Bonnefoy is out with a cold. He also mentions that Eleanor isn't coming and asks if something happened. Pharma remembers his spear of water and lack of shadow earlier but says nothing to his father. Bruno gives him a letter and potion to give to Eleanor. Pharma notices the potion will only have the same effect as a nutrient drink. He makes some acetaminophen and salve for Eleanor. He arrives at Eleanor's estate for her to be in a suit of armor. She says that Pharma must be here to kill her for knowing his secret, but Pharma refuses. Pharma offers medicine twice and Eleanor thinks it's poison. Pharma dissuades her fears both times and mentions that he needs her to continue tutoring him. Eleanor prays for Pharma to spare her in exchange for not telling anyone what he'd become. Pharma says that he needs her to help teach the divine arts since they aren't written down. He knows he may not change her mind, so he gives her a bouquet of cerulean flowers along with the medicine. After some time passes, Eleanor dissuades her own fears by saying the Panactheos is a peaceful deity and takes the medicine. The next day, Eleanor returns to the estate to continue teaching the divine arts to Pharma. He notes that she's still wearing armor, but she says it's a precaution. She thanks Pharma for the gift and takes him to a deserted island to continue learning. There are many hurdles, but Eleanor is determined to help Pharma gain control of his arts. Later, Pharma takes some notes on the staircase and says hello to the staff taking care of the manor. He diagnoses them with his divine eye and learns more about his abilities. He hopes to make himself indispensable so nobody turns on him should they find out about his divine powers. He decides to treat Charlotte Soller's hands first. He learns that he can create liquids and viscous substances with his abilities and makes a hemorrhoid cream for Charlotte's hand along with a small steroid. Charlotte is delighted when she receives the medicine and asks if her mother and the staff can have some too. Pharma agrees to treat each of the staff's independent needs. All of them are either surprised or overwhelmed. Charlotte comments that Pharma never examined them before. Pharma understands since he's only an apprentice pharmaceutist. Charlotte also mentions that only nobles get professional medical treatment, which Pharma is appalled by. He believes everyone should receive medical care regardless of their status. Charlotte wishes him the best of luck achieving that goal. Later, Blanche comes down with chicken pox and that she has to be isolated for 3 weeks. Bruno hints that Pharma can see her because he had chicken pox already but warns him about that he could catch it again. Pharma is surprised at Bruno's extensive knowledge. Bruno leaves slightly coughing. Pharma decides to make acyclovir for her. He goes to see Blanche and gives her the medicine in a macaron. Blanche asks why Pharma knows about it and Pharma says he read one of Father's latest books. Blanche begins scratching and Pharma warns her about spreading the virus. Blanche doesn't know what a virus is though, so Pharma calls it an evil spirit. He stays with Blanche for a while feeding her apples. Blanche notices how nice Pharma is being recently but doesn't care because she loves her big brother. Pharma is instantly reminded of Chiyoyaku Tani and cries a bit. A few days later, Blanche makes a complete recovery. Bruno asks about her condition and how she recovered so fast. Blanche keeps Pharma's secret. Pharma begins working on a handheld microscope so he can show bacteria and such to Blanche. While doing so, he contemplates on his abilities and knowledge and if there are any downsides to it. He's eventually called by Simon to see his father, who had requested him to see the Queen. Pharma accompanies his father, Bruno, to the royal palace where Her Majesty's condition has turned for the worse. On the way there, Pharma notices his father's bad cough but isn't able to use his divine eye at the time. They meet up with Claude de Chauliac, the head physician, and eventually Queen Elizabeth. Pharma makes note of his father's tests and how they turn to the stars. Despite this, Bruno assures the Queen that she'll be fine. Pharma knows better and believes that they're treating the situation as a euthanasia ritual. He decides to use his divine eye and determines that the Queen has tuberculosis or the White Death. He's unsure if he should step in until Elizabeth's son, Louis, and his retainer Noah come in. Louis cries for his dying mother, so Pharma steps up saying there's a new medicine for the White Death. Everyone tells Pharma to stop, but the Queen hears Pharma out and agrees to be in Pharma's care. Pharma seals himself in a laboratory and begins creating a 4-drug cocktail: isoniazid, pyrazinamide, ethambutol, and rifampin. He begins with rifampin and even draws the molecule out to get a clear image of it. As he's creating it, Bruno bursts in demanding that Pharma should cease his foolishness. Pharma is surprised that Bruno is aware of the White Death, even calling him a brilliant pharmaceutist. Pharma says that a cure does exist, and that Bruno will have to take it since he caught it while tending to the Queen. Pharma tries to get back to making rifampin but is stopped by his father's divine arts. Bruno asks what Pharma is trying to create, and that if Pharma can't answer, he'll call it poison. He attacks again, but Pharma stops it and makes a barrier of ice. Bruno is stunned, asking who Pharma is and what he means to do. Bruno ends up turning to the book on a table nearby and looks through it. Pharma answers that knowledge is in that book that came in a dream when the lightning struck. Bruno notices the holy mark of the Panactheos on Pharma's arm, saying that as God granted his blessing to his youngest son. Pharma asks Bruno to give the medicine to His Majesty, but Bruno declines, saying that Pharma should deliver it himself and bear its consequence. Pharma complies and lowers the ice barrier before going back to work. As Bruno looks on, he thinks about how his son used to cry over the lab whenever a mistake was made. Bruno asks if Pharma is still his son, and Pharma replies that he considers himself to be. Pharma returns to the Queen's bedroom wearing a mask. Claude asks if Bruno should rein in his son, but Bruno is convinced that Pharma has the most skill in the room. Pharma brings the microscope he made along with a sample he obtained from the Queen. He helps the Queen see the bacteria causing the White Death through it. Claude and the other physicians see it and are stunned. Pharma describes the bacteria to them and how the medicine will get rid of them with 6 months of consistent treatment. Elizabeth agrees to take the medicine come what may, and Pharma pours 2 drug cocktails. Pharma offers to oversee the Queen's treatment and drinks one of the drug cocktails. He proclaims that the White Death won't be incurable anymore, and he's questioned by the noble pharmaceutists about it. As Bruno and Pharma return to the mansion, Bruno looks back on how he looked to understand his patients' hearts. Yet he couldn't understand his son's heart and pushed him too hard. As they return, Pharma gives Bruno his medicine to take while mentioning that he helped him understand what needed to be done with patients facing their imminent death. Bruno agrees, and they decide to share knowledge as the rest of the family welcomes their return. During the first 3 months of Elizabeth's treatment, Pharma and Bruno exchange information regarding medicine. Bruno mentions that someone was looking for the White Death cure, but he sent the noble on his way. Pharma says that while he's the only one who can make the medicine currently, he's eventually make the method public, for he believes all knowledge on medicine is to be shared. Bruno mentions that Pharma's ideas may seem as insane or heretical to others. He also mentions that someone may have brought the White Death into the castle. Pharma mentions that a transfer rate is pretty low considering the circumstances. As Pharma leaves, Bruno thinks about one such heretic. Before Pharma sees the Queen, he's pulled aside by Noah, who gossips about what the Empress could reward him with. Pharma has no ideas at first, but then mentions that he wants to open up a pharmacy in the capital to tend to the rich and poor alike. During the meeting with the Queen, she mentions how she'll likely not have a claim to the throne since she was brought low by disease. Pharma assures her, saying that she has the faith of her son and her people behind her. He also hints that she'll treat her second life better just as he did. After 3 more months, a ceremony is held for Pharma and Bruno at the royal court. A fully healed Elizabeth II grants Bruno with the land of Marseille. She also promotes Pharma from apprentice to official royal pharmaceutist. She also gives permission for him to open his pharmacy in the capital. Pharma sees the carpenters and stonemasons who have come to help Pharma work on his pharmacy. Eleanor and Charlotte also come to help out. Pharma eventually makes a floor plan, and everyone goes to work right away. Later, when asked about what he'll call the pharmacy, he's offered some ideas. He accidentally mutters how his pharmacy would be a parallel world pharmacy, and it becomes the new store title. The chairman of the local pharmaceutists guild, Varen, meets up with Pharma. He attempts to bring down Pharma's reputation, only for Pharma to shrug it off. When he tries being more deliberate, he is sent away by Eleanor. Pharma hires Eleanor and Charlotte to work as his staff, but is perplexed on where to find someone who can handle bookkeeping. When coming home, he gets news that Cedric Lanoux is retiring. He wants to keep working, but he has bad knees. Pharma offers to heal his legs if he handles the bookkeeping. When Pharma asks his father about his, Bruno is already aware of it and gives his son a lot of money for capital. Pharma realizes that Bruno let Cedric go so he could be of use to Pharma and is grateful. Later on, Pharma opens up his pharmacy after a long speech that is attended by some nobles and notable commoners. A month after Parallel World Pharmacy has opened has led to only sporadic visits from nobles and merchants. Eleanor isn't surprised given that customers prefer loyalty and nobles prefer convenience. Charlotte conducts a survey to learn that people are either afraid, distrusting, or illiterate. Pharma and the group come up with ideas to help a few of the problems. The only regular customer, Jean, comes in looking for water and sailor's candies, which contain vitamin C. After he leaves, Pharma's parents check out the shop in disguise. They're given a quick tour and asked about the customer traffic. Pharma explains the situation and Beatrice suggests selling cosmetics. Pharma is for the idea since he took part in cosmetic testing in his previous life. Bruno is okay with it as long as white face powder isn't sold. Pharma is impressed with Bruno's knowledge, seeing as how white face powder has poisonous lead and mercury compounds. Beatrice is then complimented by Bruno about her looking as beautiful as ever. A retainer comes in asking for Pharma as his master collapsed in the carriage outside. Pharma investigates and learns that the noble woman has a mild fever and cuts on her forearms from bloodletting. She's quickly led inside to deal with the infection on her arm. The noble woman, Chloe de Chatillon, explains that the one she loved scorned her and that she was hoping to make her skin paler to woo him. Pharma gives her a syrup for her anemia and some medicine for her infection that she has to take 3 times a day. Pharma also warns against the use of white face powder, but Chloe doesn't want to give it up. Pharma decides to get some safer makeup ready in a week. He tests a prototype of Chloe's cream, and the staff is stunned. Pharma mentions that lead and mercury compounds in other face powders, which leads to Eleanor telling him to talk with the queen about it. Pharma agrees. When Chloe returns, she's amazed by the new makeup. She has lost a bit from Pharma's scientific speech but is delighted to never go through bloodletting again. The makeup becomes extremely popular and most of the town goes wild over it. Jean comments on the new popularity, but Pharma brings up a new issue: the supply couldn't keep up with the overwhelming demand. Chloe is aware of this and offers a solution: open up an independent subsidiary store with Pharma as the proprietor. Chloe offers to finance it and hire the staff. Pharma agrees to it with some help from Cedric. Medique Cosmetics opens and Pharma is amazed. Pharma visits the Queen Elizabeth, who has heard tales of Pharma's cosmetics. She wants to hear about future cosmetics and is allowed to test a medicated lip gloss. Elizabeth makes some edicts about the ban of mercury and lead compounds in white face powder, but also mentions that Pharma needs to share his methods lest he be at the head of an oligopoly. Pharma agrees and decides to tell the court with the hopes that they'll make the production method public. For a summer vacation, the de Medicis family visits Marseille. As Bruno de Medicis hears the trade reports from the people in charge, including reports from the Nether Kingdom, Pharma de Medicis is allowed to go onto the beach. Charlotte and Blanche are already on the beach and want to swim. Pharma is hesitant but eventually gives in to the cute pair by saying they can dip their feet in. Eleanor also decides to go swimming as Pharma looks back on his old life and how his younger sister didn't get the chance to swim. As Pharma is reminiscing, Blanche is swept into the sea by a large wave. Pharma quickly goes out to sea to rescue her with Eleanor following. Blanche is pulled underwater and Pharma goes through a relapse on being unable to save his sister again. He activates his divine power and eliminates a chunk of the sea. Eleanor and Charlotte are stunned as Pharma gets the 3 people in the water ashore. Blanche cries on how scary the experience was and Eleanor comments on how Pharma did more than she ever thought possible. Pharma is just relieved his sister is safe. As Pharma goes to bed, he thinks about how he could have dried up everyone nearby if he wasn't careful. Charlotte enters Pharma's room and mentions how amazed she was at Pharma's abilities. Pharma is happy Charlotte remained on the shore as she's a part of his family too. Charlotte is brought to tears by Pharma's words, and she leaves with both of them feeling much better. On a rainy night, Salomon hears of Pharma's feats and is keen to eliminate this heretic. When the pharmacy reopens, it's very busy. Pharma tries to help 2 white-robed gentlemen, but they leave. Eleanor notes that they were only interested in Pharma and that the white robes meant that they were likely temple priests. Charlotte and Pharma decide to tell the guards about them. The next morning, a blindfolded horse carrying a cart of sediment ran into the pharmacy as the guard was changing shifts. Bruno calls this an act of war and sends people to investigate. Pharma thinks that either the temple guards or the Pharmacists Guild could have caused this, but decides not to make any rash actions. Cedric joins Pharma in front of the pharmacy where people are already working hard. Cedric tells Pharma that no one was hurt and purifies the sediment inside the store floor. Cedric mentions that the people they can take care of can be taken care of in Medique Cosmetics, as that is where Charlotte and Eleanor are. Jean comes by with some people to help along with people of the community. Pharma is grateful. A woman then comes by asking for Pharma's help in helping her father. Pharma agrees to go and goes on horseback with the woman. They ride into the countryside, but before Pharma realizes what's happening, the woman is gone. Pharma is then surrounded by the church's inquisition led by Salomon. In a flashback, Eleanor Bonnefoy teaches Pharma de Medicis about the temple ranking above even the queen and how they give the power of divine arts to the nobility. She also mentions the office of Inquisition that takes out evil spirits and heretics that abuse divine arts. Back in the present, Salomon announces himself and demands that Pharma step back. Pharma obeys and is put into a binding circle. It doesn't work because Kanji Akutani isn't an evil spirit. One of the officers uses fire divine arts, but Pharma creates a nitrogen barrier and eliminates the oxygen to extinguish the fire. Another officer uses sword dance awise, but Pharma eliminates the water. Pharma expresses that he doesn't want to harm anyone, but Salomon wants everyone to obliterate him. The officers use a variety of divine arts, but Pharma protects himself with an ice barrier. He blows everyone back while mentioning he wanted to solve this without using violence. Salomon is knocked off his horse and sees Pharma's holy mark. Salomon claims that he didn't see the signs and the person before them was the Panactheos. He casts no shadow for he is light. The officers quickly bow before Pharma and apologize. Salomon is even willing to offer up his life as he broke his leg when he fell off his horse. Pharma looks at Salomon through the divine eye and suggests amputation. The injury glows red, meaning it was the wrong treatment method, so Pharma suggests reduction, which was the correct answer. Pharma is conflicted as surgical operations weren't his forte, but there wasn't anyone else who could treat him. Arma creates a stone examination table and tells everyone that he's going to treat Salomon. Everyone is naturally surprised that he is showing them mercy as Pharma asks for a carriage to come as soon as possible. Salomon needs his leg stable and a horse ride will make the injury worse. Once Pharma has completed the operation, he mentions that Salomon's life is no longer in danger and that he can be taken to the temple to recuperate. The officers are happy to be spared from punishment while Pharma doesn't want anyone telling them of what happened. They comply as the carriage arrives. A few months later, the new head bishop, Salomon, visits Parallel World Pharmacy to the surprise of Eleanor and Charlotte Soller. Pharma senses Salomon's hostility to anyone against him as he notices the extra escort. As Charlotte leaves to enjoy her treat, she finds Blanche de Medicis at the gate wanting to go shopping with her brother. In the back room, Salomon presents Pharma with a wand known as the Panacrabdos, a sacred treasure of the guardian deity temple. Pharma wonders if he should carry something that valuable, but when he picks it up, it shines with divine light, proving the sacred treasure has chosen him. Eleanor wants to carry it, but the wand passes through her hands and lands on the floor. It turns out the wand isn't from this world and only a divine entity could wield it. Pharma realizes something and hovers on the wand for a bit, amazing Eleanor and Salomon. He also gives Pharma a talisman to hide his divine nature, giving him a shadow. While shopping with Blanche, he overhears some commoner pharmacists talking about how parallel world pharmacy is considered heretical. They can't sell their products as a result, much to the common folks' dismay. Pharma makes note of this and decides to make a compounders guild to help others sell his products. He gets Medique on board as Cedric Lanoux agrees to fill out the paperwork. Later that night, a commoner pharmacist, Jean-Alain Gabin, is distraught that he can't heal his ailing daughter. As parallel world pharmacy continues to profit, the Pharmaceutists Guild continues to decline. Varen continues to blame Pharma as rumors circulate that he sent the blindfolded horse into the pharmacy. Later, Pierre tries to ask one of the doctors in town to look at his daughter, but the office is closed. Pharma happens to pass by and offers his help. Pierre reluctantly accepts and Charlotte goes to prepare. They go in through the back entrance where Pierre believes that he had to come this way because he was a commoner. It's when he's told to wear a cloth mask that he realizes that they went in the back way to prevent everyone else from getting infected. He continues to be amazed when Pharma goes into a lot of detail regarding medication, including the weight. Pharma determines her condition to be influenza and tries to make it simple for Pierre. Pharma offers some medicine to help lower Marie's fever. That night, Marie is well enough to leave the pharmacy. Pharma mentions that while the pharmacy is closed at night, Pierre can let the guards know if Marie gets worse and he'll come. His payment is low because children need care especially. As he heads back, Pierre understands why the guild can't keep up. Later, as Pierre takes notes, his wife mentions that Marie fell asleep. She gets worried when Pierre mentions that he went to Parallel World Pharmacy. Pierre talks about how great Pharma is and wants even a sliver of his knowledge to help his business. His wife asks him not to do anything rash as Pierre weeps that he may be unable to help his family when they get especially sick. Pierre brings news of his visit to the pharmacy when the guild next meets. Varen immediately calls him out and laments not being able to save his own son. Pierre calls out Varen's selfishness and wishes for the rest of the guild to follow him. Varen doesn't listen and kicks Pierre out of the guild. Later, Pharma comes across Pierre distraught in front of his smashed-up shop. Pharma admits that he had no idea Pierre was running his own pharmacy as Pierre thinks about moving away to start a new pharmacy in a new country. Pharma reveals that he just got permission to start the Compounding Pharmacy Guild from the Queen. He offers Pierre to join it and Pierre accepts in tears. Sometime later, Pierre is ready to open up again but is nervous. Marie says some words of encouragement to calm his nerves and he opens the door. Many customers have come flocking and Pierre cries tears of joy. He wipes away his tears as he welcomes everyone to Dawn Pharmacy. Bruno de Medicis has a dream about Camus de Sada's fall from grace. Pharma de Medicis notices his father's distress, but Bruno says it's not important. Simon gives him a letter from Paul de Medicis which makes Blanche de Medicis nervous. Apparently, he was supposed to come for a visit, but it was delayed. Bruno calls Pharma to his office after breakfast. Bruno mentions the San Flu Fair takes place next month where merchants from all over the world come together. Apparently, the Nether Kingdom's colony of Ponte Island recently had an epidemic. When researchers went to gather tissue samples, a few of them died too. There are also a few merchant ships from the Nether Kingdom with goods from the island headed there. The only port they can get to offload is Marseille. Pharma asks to look at the sample only to find out that they were incinerated, for the best. Pal's letter mentioned after the researchers perished, the lab was sealed off. At Parallel World Pharmacy, Pharma discusses with Eleanor Bonnefoy about the situation involving the Nether Kingdom and how the fair can't be stopped since it's 2 weeks away. Charlotte Soller gives Pharma a note from Pal to him that shows the sketch. Pharma confirms that the disease that infected Ponte Island was the Black Death. Pharma and Eleanor send off people from the Compounding Pharmacy Guild to Marseille. They're directed to work with the local governor, Adam, with the plan involving quarantine stations. Pharma then talks with Bruno about the Black Death and Bruno agrees with him. Bruno mentions how he learned it from texts and how the previous plague concerning the Black Death was 210 years ago. Pharma and Eleanor explain how they're moving ahead with quarantine stations and medication, levofloxacin. Bruno is impressed with Pharma's preparation but notes that it's so much for one person to take on by themselves. He joins the two of them to talk to Elizabeth. They explain the situation to her, and she agrees to limit the point of entry for merchants. Pharma also asks for permission to inspect the cargo at the gates while also asking for everyone in the kingdom to kill any fleas and rodents on site while also boiling their clothes. Elizabeth agrees and sends her minister to send out the edicts while saying it's her duty to protect her empire and subjects. A bit later, the quarantine stations are set up and Pierre uses a compound microscope Pharma made. He remarks that 1,000 doses of medicine Pharma provided has been packaged. Pharma is relieved and said that if anyone gets infected they are to be treated no matter who they are. Elizabeth talks with her ministers that the fair is proceeding along with the quarantine stations. She also hears that Solomon and the church are also ready to assist and that there are no rumors of an impending disease among the populace. Elizabeth is relieved and wants there to be no chaos in her nation to make it appear weaker. Pharma and Eleanor head off to Marseille to assist in the examination of the cargo leaving Charlotte and Cedric Lanoux in the capital. They wish the pair good luck as they set off. Meanwhile, an evil spirit wanders through a dead city. At the coastal city of Marseille, Eleanor Bonnefoy's students have made sure the ships stay off the port until they're inspected. They've done a good job as Pharma de Medicis goes to inspect the ships with Eleanor. On the first ship he doesn't find anyone with the Black Death but does notice some sailors with scurvy on board. The noble merchants begin to get impatient and throw produce at Pharma's boat. Before Eleanor can retaliate though, some cannon fire halts the nobles. They come from the Scarlet Fleet led by Commodore Jean-Alain Gabin. Pharma is happy to see him while Jean hopes to stop by Parallel World Pharmacy again. As the group takes a break, everyone is relieved things are going well. However, Adam comes in saying a ship that couldn't wait and docked in a stack village to smuggle in their cargo. All they know is that the people have left the village, but people are dying in said village. Pharma heads out personally much to Eleanor's protests. Pharma trusts her with handling things at Marseille and flies off on the Panicrabdos. He nearly runs into a bird and passes through a tree on his way there. Pharma arrives at the village to find people leaving the village in fear. Pharma wants everyone to stay and be treated, but they see him as the one who cursed them at first. Pharma quickly puts up an ice barrier around the village to contain the disease and says he's there to help them. He divides the village into those seriously ill, those slightly sick, and those that aren't infected. Pharma quickly treats the infected and goes to the hospital where those most severely infected are staying. Professor Louise Casper wants to help, but everyone ignores her because she's close to retirement. She's aware of this and wants someone to take care of her microscopic studies. She's then called into the president's office. Back in Estac village, Pharma de Medicis goes into the hospital to find some members of the church wearing plague doctor masks. They're suspicious of him until a member of Salomon's Inquisition recognizes Pharma. Pharma conducts an examination, and while several people can be cured with levofloxacin, one passed away and one died had a common cold. Pharma directs the patient with the common cold to the infected sector with some new clothes and an isolation period. He uses the Panicrabdos to continue the healing process. The Inquisition finishes delivering medicine to the patients and are tasked with finding the people who brought the illness in, burning up the cargo and delivering medicine to the infected. In Marseille, Eleanor Bonnefoy is worried that Pharma had to leave the town, but one of her students calms her down. At the academy, Bruno de Medicis talks with Professor Casper about a special medicine that microorganisms can use to stop the Black Death. The professor is overwhelmed but has plenty of microorganisms to stop the Black Death. Pharma breaks the news that a few of the patients didn't survive, but the head pharmacist of the town is happy that some people are going to live. Pharma leaves Estac village with everyone needing to stay in town for 2 weeks. Rodents and fleas needing to be eradicated, and if people needed to leave, such animals had to be killed on side. Pharma flies down the road to the capital and finds the torched cargo with some tied-up workers being very unhappy. Pharma breaks it to the workers that they have the Black Death while learning that at least one crate of white squirrels made it away with 24 workers and 5 holy knights. The holy knights are a concern to the members of the church. Pharma decides to cure all of the workers with the church dealing their punishment later. Pharma also thinks about this bioterrorist attack being similar to when Elizabeth II had the White Death. Bruno hears word of the coming cargo and warns Elizabeth of the attack. Meanwhile, Charlotte Soller is handing out masks to everyone and Pierre is looking at samples that come into the capital. He finds a match to the Black Death and hurries to Gate 6 only for the Holy Knights to let loose the squirrels into the city. Pierre hurries to get the guards to sound the alarm as Camus de Sade waits in anticipation. News of the bioterrorist attack gets to Elizabeth and Bruno de Medicis adds that this attack may have been orchestrated by his old academy friend, Camus de Sade behind the Nether Kingdom. Salomon stops the Holy Knights from advancing and seals their divine magic. It's later learned that these knights performed this task because the populace were held hostage by Camus. As they die, Pharma de Medicis arrives and learns of Camus' attack. When the alarm bells fall silent for a bit, Charlotte Soller goes to check on the pharmacy with Cedric Lanoux behind her. As the alarm bells come back on, both Cedric and Charlotte are stabbed by Camus, who has become an evil spirit. Bruno and Pharma arrive to see Camus amazed by Pharma's concoctions. Bruno fights Camus while Pharma heals his friends. Bruno falls and Camus turns to face Pharma, who is upset that this man cannot be healed. Camus throws Pharma's concoctions at him, but Pharma is able to eliminate them and punch Camus in the face. Camus warns Pharma that the people won't be able to accept him just as the people didn't accept him. Pharma chooses to preserve their lives as he punches Camus outside and stabs him with the Panicrabdos. Camus dies as the spell Cleansing Sanctuary is cast. Charlotte hugs Pharma, thanking him for saving her. The battle with the Black Death continued throughout the city as Eleanor Bonnefoy finished up the inspection of the ships to Marseille. Pharma developed more treatments for the Black Death, and the Compounding Pharmacy Guild distributed them throughout the capital, even to people like Varon. Louise Casper's research continued as well, creating more new medicines. 2 months after Camus' attack, the epidemic ends, the fair begins and Parallel World Pharmacy reopens. Many people come by bearing gifts including Jean-Alain Gabin, Pierre and Salomon. Many people return to the pharmacy as Charlotte welcomes them.